Hey, I want to take a moment today to do a final impressions video, a review here of my Ruger LCR double action only pistol chambered in .327 Federal Magnum. Now, for those of you not familiar with .327 Federal Magnum, it is basically a skinny .357 Magnum. It's not actually, but that's kind of a good way to think about it. It is a round like this one here, this Federal Hydra-Shok, that is supposed to perform similar to a .357 Magnum, but give you a smaller footprint so you can actually fit more rounds in the same size gun. This here is an 85 grain, as I said, Federal Hydra-Shok. So I'm going to give you a review today of both the gun and, in a way, the ammo also. I don't think I have to tell anyone much about the Ruger LCR. It's a very popular gun, and it's popular for a good reason. It is a polymer framed gun. It has a polymer grip frame, and then it either has an aluminum or a stainless steel body with a stainless steel cylinder and a stainless steel barrel insert. That's true of pretty much all the guns. This does come in an LCRX or an LCR version. For most calibers, the LCRX version has a hammer. The LCR version is double action only. In the .327 Magnum, it's only available in the standard hammerless version at this time. The main selling point of this gun is the trigger. The triggers on these are amazing. They have great little triggers for a small gun like this. So that is probably their number one selling point, the fact that they're light and the fact that they have a great trigger. Now this gun right here is pretty much just a factory gun. The only changes I have made is I put a fiber optic front sight on it from Hi-Vis, which I do to all my Ruger LCR guns. I like this front sight a lot, and I changed out the grip. Now when I tested the gun, I used the regular grip, but I put this more compact grip on it because it fits in the fanny pack holster I have a lot easier when I carry this in a waist pack, and if you carry in your pocket, it would also fit in a pocket better. But otherwise, it's a standard gun with the differences that come on it because of the caliber. Now the big difference between this one and the other models like the .357 Magnum version of this one is, like I said, it holds 6 rounds instead of 5. That's the one big advantage of the .327 Federal Magnum. But is it the only advantage? Because if it is the only advantage, well, it's going to have to be a big advantage to overweigh the shortcomings of the round, because there are some, and we'll talk about those here in a few moments. So let's see first, is that the only advantage, getting one more round? Well, a lot of people will say, well, you also have the advantage of reduced recoil and it handling much more easily than a .357 Magnum version, while still getting similar performance. But I'm going to have to say, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with either part of it. Now, at the range, this gun is very snappy still. Now, granted, there is probably a difference between it and a .357 Magnum, but in this small platform, I really can't tell much of a difference. If there's people out there that are more recoil sensitive than me, you might be able to notice the difference. Your threshold might be in a different place. But for me, it's very similar to shooting a .357 Magnum. I felt the same amount of muzzle rise on the gun. I felt the same amount of snap in my palm, or at least it seemed like the same to me. So I don't really give it a big advantage as far as recoil or handling is concerned. But what about performance? Does it still perform as well as a .357 Magnum, therefore making that one extra round worth it? And in that, I'm going to have to say no also. The bullets are just too light. They range in weight from 85 grain up to 115 grain, traveling at varying velocities. But with a bullet that light, a bullet of 115 grains or lighter, I'm going to have to see velocities of 1600 feet per second to be acceptable to me. And that round isn't delivering those numbers, especially in a gun this size. In fact, for such light bullets, they don't travel all that fast. I'm getting regularly like 1150 up to 1200 feet per second out of varying rounds out of this gun. Just not fast enough for me with that light of a bullet, because I want both mass and speed. I want velocity and mass to equal great penetration, and not just penetration, because sometimes these littler bullets will penetrate like a ballistics vest if they're traveling fast enough, but that doesn't mean they're still going to perform well after they penetrate, especially lighter bullets that are composed primarily of lead. If they go through a hard barrier, they don't tend to maintain their performance after they go through, especially when it comes to trajectory. They tend to alter course because they hit a solid object. That's not acceptable to me. These rounds really aren't available in any solid core bullets, any solid copper bullets or anything like that. So I haven't found a round that will equal a 357 Magnum performance, even when you're just dealing with regular 357 Magnum ammo, and I haven't found a round that will compete, especially with like Underwood bullets from 357 Magnum, which will perform much better. Maybe if we could get a solid copper like Lehigh bullet with an Underwood loading for this gun, it might perform better, but I still don't think it would perform as well as the 357 Magnum simply because of the lower bullet weights. I don't think it would perform in real-world applications like windshields or car doors as well as the heavier 140 grain 357 Magnum ammo. So I'm going to have to say, after having this gun for a while and trying to decide, is that extra round worth it? I don't think it is, because like I said, I think that is the only advantage, is the one extra round, and I don't want to give up performance for one extra round. I would rather have 5 rounds that do 100% of the job than I would 6 rounds that do 75% of the job with each shot, because you need 100% of the job from every shot if you want to be well protected, if you want something that performs the way it should. And I just don't feel that this caliber, in the loadings that are available now, does the job with each individual round that a 357 Magnum can do. So that one extra round is just more of an ineffectual round, or just a not as effective round. And I'm not wanting to accept not as effective, but not even for one extra round. So I'm going to have to say not worth it. Now, if you want the 327 round, though, if you don't agree with my assessment of the caliber, is this still a good gun to get? Well, yes, of course it's a good gun to get, because the Ruger LCR hasn't changed. It's still an amazing platform. I hope they make this in an LCRX, so for people who want a double action, single action revolver, can get it in the 327. That's one reason this gun itself is not worth it to me, because any revolver that doesn't have a hammer is not really a revolver I want. So I do have to give this gun itself failing marks from me, simply because it doesn't have a hammer. If that doesn't bother you, the gun itself is great. There's only one thing I'm going to say bad about the Ruger LCR series, and that is the same thing that's great about them, and that is the trigger. The triggers on the LCR are very smooth, very consistent. They break very nicely. There's only one problem I have with them, and this is versus a Smith & Wesson trigger or other Ruger triggers even, is you feel that big click right there where it feels like the trigger's reset? It hasn't. It's really easy to short stroke this trigger because it feels like it's resetting, but it's not. It actually has to click like a thunk, like it's reset, and then another little click afterwards. So it's easy to short stroke it, like I just said. So if you're someone that may short stroke the trigger, especially someone who comes from semi-automatics to revolvers, that's something you should be cautious about with a Ruger LCR of any make or any caliber. So in closing, I'm going to have to say, as far as the ammo is concerned, I'm going to have to consider the 327 Federal, so far, a failed experiment. The loadings that are available right now from manufacturers and on the retail market just don't reduce recoil enough to make it worth it, and they definitely don't reach that minimum level of performance that I expect from a concealed carry round. So I'm going to have to say nix to the 327 Federal. I just don't think it's worth it, even with that extra round. Now, as far as the gun itself is concerned, the Ruger LCR, great gun, but I'm going to say, it does have some shortcomings. Like I said, that trigger can be short stroked easily, and if you have the LCR version, there's no hammer, and every revolver should have a hammer as far as I'm concerned. But if you can be mindful of that trigger and you're not worried about a hammer, the Ruger LCR is still, as it's always been, an excellent gun. Now, one thing to remember, if you do get the 327 Federal Magnum version, this will be a stainless steel frame or a stainless steel body. So it's actually going to be a little heavier than you might expect, but it's still a really nice gun. It's just not as nice as the 357 Magnum version, and it's definitely not as nice as the LCRX 357 Magnum version. So even while I'll say this gun is acceptable, and if someone wants it, I can't really fault them, I would still suggest, if you're going to buy a Ruger LCR, buy the LCRX in 357 Magnum.